In September 1943, I was drafted into the Army to be a tailor, a job for which I had absolutely no qualifications. This came about because I had been drafted for limited, that is, non-combatant service. At the time I was drafted, September 1943, I had finished my junior year at Stanford University. I was overweight and I had 2400 vision. I was fit to serve, but not, as the Army thought, fit to fight. For 9 long months I measured inductees, not very carefully, for uniforms at the Presidio of Monterey Reception Center in Monterey, California. Then, as the war seemed certain to pass me by, I was suddenly and inexplicably reclassified into general service. Hurried eastward to Camp Pickett, Virginia, rushed through 6 weeks of infantry basic and shipped to Europe as part of a regiment of replacement riflemen. We were part of a packet known only as JG 350A. Our replacement officers came from a replacement officer pool. Our non-commissioned officers were from another division. We were a motley crew, former service commandos like myself, Army Specialized Training Program student soldiers, the best that could be scraped up from anywhere. It was not quite that we were warm bodies, but we were hardly trained soldiers. After a journey across the Atlantic through Scotland, England, and France, 29 of us arrived one afternoon at our final destination, Company L of the 39th Infantry, 9th Infantry Division, or rather what was left of it. L Company had been ambushed the day before on October 13, 1944, in the Hürtgen Forest near Germeter, Germany. Only 2 of its 4 platoons and a single officer remained. The next day, 6 of us, including me, were sent to fill gaps left in the line by death and injury. Within 15 minutes, 2 of us had been wounded. It would get worse. By the time the war ended 8 months later, only 2 of the 29 were unscathed. I suffered my personal wound New Year's Day, 1945, on the Belgian-German border in the middle of the Battle of the Bulge, when I was struck in the side by a piece of shrapnel. Company L had spent a day-long combat patrol in advance of our lines, trying to rout out a German strong point. It was a sunny but icy cold day as we struggled through ankle-deep snow and thickly planted trees. We fought all day, finally at the cost of 33 wounded and 6 dead. Freezing and utterly weary, in the gathering darkness we withdrew behind our lines. As we did, German self-propelled guns across the valley fired, and a piece of shrapnel struck me in the side. It was like being struck a blow with a baseball bat. I staggered to my feet, yelling for a medic, but none came. Finally, accompanied by my best friend and my platoon sergeant, slipping and sliding on the frozen road, we stumbled 2 miles to the rear to the aid station, where my wound was at last dressed. Thereafter, I spent 2 weeks in the hospital and 2 weeks in the replacement depot before returning to L Company. I found it was almost the same place where I had entered combat in October, but now it was spring. We attacked across the Rhine plain, taking many small villages until we reached Bad Godesberg on the Rhine River. The next morning we trucked south to Remagen, and before we knew it, we were on the Remagen Bridge, crossing the Rhine. For a week we helped widen the Remagen bridgehead, then we broke through the last crust of real German resistance and helped close the Ruhr pocket. When the war ended, we were 100 kilometers from Berlin in Dessau, Germany, at the confluence of the Mulde and Elbe rivers, awaiting the Russians. At first, with the ending of the war, I thought my 8 months in combat unique, but with time I came to see they were quite ordinary. I never knowingly killed anyone. I counted only 125 shots I fired in anger, most of them on the day I was wounded. The rest of the time I was a body to be moved here and there by command, to occupy the enemy's ground, to push the olive drab line forward. Wearing glasses seemed not to have anything to do with this, and by the time the war ended, I was lighter by 20 pounds. And I survived. I was occasionally terrified, ever weary, sometimes almost to death, cold, hot, and hungry. I slept in the snow. I lived in holes in the ground. I cursed and was cursed. I learned to hate war in all its forms. I welcomed its end. I find all wars since have been mostly folly, but I am ambivalent about World War II. It peculiar nostalgia. In it I was young, in it I grew to manhood, in it I found I was not less but as much as anyone else. And I learned one other thing: I will never, ever be a tailor.